Okay, ladies and gentlemen, I have 7 o'clock. I call this the Town of Tron Board of Commissioners meeting for 18 May 2021 to order. Please, if you would, for invitation, would you please have a moment of silence? And we have enough things going on, sure you can find something to think positive about. Thank you. Mayor Pro Tem. Please.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Okay, agenda adoption, additions, deletions, or corrections. Seeing none, Chair will entertain a motion. All in favor, aye. Opposed, likewise, motion carries. Consent agenda, any additions, deletions, corrections, or clarifications? Chair will entertain a motion to adopt. All in favor, aye. Opposed, likewise, motion carries. For those that have been here before, our consent agenda, ladies and gentlemen, will come to every month. There are odds and ends that come to us during the month. They don't change. They're almost the same every month. If someone has a tax problem and we found out that they actually didn't know that tax, it has to be. So those are the types of things that put into the consent agenda. Item 6, presentation of budget. Zach?
So you have in your packet, both the budget message and the budget ordinance, as well as a copy of said budget. But to touch on what we've worked on the past couple of months, basically the budget itself is going to be 4.2 million. That's 1.6 in general fund, 65 in Powell bill, 553 in fire, 237 in Harmon Field, 31 in tourism, 1.5 million in water sewer, and then 249,000 in sanitation. This budget is created. We have taken the current tax rate of 50.28, that's 50 cents, 0.28. We've dropped it to 48.10, so roughly 48 cents, 48.10 cents for every $100 of valuation. That has created real property value that's assessed by the county at, basically it's going to produce $902,000 in revenue at 100% collection rate. 17,000 of that figure includes various things such as boats and motorhomes, but we factor everything off. 98% collection rate. We're also estimating vehicle tax to be around 80,000. Basically, what we have presented is a similar budget to last year, but it allows for certain projects that you decided. Governing body is 109,000. That includes your projects. Admin is 553. Police is 716. Streets is 227. Parks and zoning is 41. So that's your 1.6 million. The projects that are being added, you have identified. The town staff will create a kudzu eradication program. There's 30,000 going to that, 20,000 for boardwalk, 1,000 for some rail to trail discussions, 10,000 for some signs, as well as some other small things around town. Then basically we have our budget ordinance that has been attached, and that is everything that you've worked on throughout the year, put into ordinance form to be presented and displayed for the next month. And then we will set a public hearing in June. And then you can vote to approve or deny in June.
Comments? Okay, thank you. Item 6, Chair will entertain a motion to set the public hearing for 15 June 2021 during the work session beginning at 7 p.m. All those in favor, aye. Opposed, likewise, motion carries. Item 8, 55 Melrose Avenue bid. Zach?
At the last meeting, you rejected all bids that were received. I was tasked with taking another offer. That offer has been put in front of you, as well as the resolution I was tasked with drawing up. That resolution would be, if you would accept this offer, that would place that property in the upset bid process once again. And we would start over with this offer from Masada Holdings of Ashboro.
Okay, Mr. Attorney,
So the motion, I'm
are there
sorry.
any clarifications that we need from you before we move on this?
No, but the action you would take is to adopt the resolution of the commissioners authorizing the upset bid process regarding the sale of real property, much like the one a few months ago, except now it's a new bid, which is referenced in there, as Zach said, and we get it advertised and see what happens.
Okay.
Make a motion to adopt the resolution.
Mr. Mayor, can I be heard before we all vote on that?
I don't have a problem, it's out of order, does the board have any problem with this? We don't. Ellis?
Thank you. My name is Ellis Fincher. I reside at 77 Chestnut Street, Unit 105 in Tryon. My family moved to Tryon in June 1966 when my parents purchased Tryon Pharmacy. In 1971, I moved out of the town limits and did not move back into Tryon until April this year. Although we did not live in town all those years, we were very much in the area. First, we were just across the state line on Ridge Road for the last 17 years on White Oak Mountain in Columbus. Throughout these years, we remained active locally. Both of our children attended Tryon City Schools. We were the parents who were hands-on volunteering our time and resources during their school years, which was expansive because our two children had 13 years difference in age. At age 19, I began my career working at Henson's, a small contracting and material supply company. In 1979, I became an officer and part owner of the business. Through all my working years, we contributed to the town either by working for free, working at reduced rates, providing free material, or allowing the town to dump wood waste at our processing facility for free. That happened for about 8 years. Examples of our giving back to the town include performing the grading work at what is now referred to as Seagrove Field at a reduced rate. I cannot remember exactly, but our donation would have exceeded $20,000. Donating mulch at the new playground at Harmon Field and providing the hauling. Donating mulch to numerous garden clubs in the town for the project to beautify the area. Allowing the town to dump wood waste free for a number of years. The first year we did begin to charge the town in 2018, the town paid almost $22,000 at a 35% discounted rate. If you multiply that out over those 8 years, it would have been over $200,000 that we gave to the town. $9,765 was donated to the Tryon Downtown Development Association. This list is not exhaustive, but rather a simple list as far as one's knowledge and my consistent commitment to lending a hand when possible. Before my father passed, he received a call from the town of Tryon with a request that they be allowed to place a sign at the bottom of his drive. They also said they would landscape and maintain the area. Well, they did landscape it, but they hadn't maintained it since the inception. I've done that. For the last 10+ years, I've owned this property and continued to allow the town to leave a sign. The sign reads, "Welcome to the friendliest town in the South." Around the turn of the century, I purchased my first piece of property in the Tryon area. When it was bought through HEM Property Developers, of which I'm a member, I do not think it was in the city limits, but soon was, and I think we requested that to happen. We purchased 2 more adjacent tracts. The address is 936 South Trade Street, where the TG Bank just moved out of. The once low-lying and overground parking lot beside one Tryon place was also purchased and brought back to life by an associate and myself. We graded and filled it, bringing it road level, and continue to keep it well maintained. Why do I even bring these purchases up? It is to let you know how long I've been around and to let you know what you could expect from one of my endeavors. This groundwork brings me to the subject as to why I'm here this evening. I'm sure you're aware that I was the one who put in the original $140,000 bid on 55 Melrose Avenue. It was upset at $150,000. I then upset that bid by submitting a $160,000 bid, which was not upset. The water was muddied by a last-minute, irregular bid, which properly was thrown out, making my bid of $160,000 a high bid. This property should have been awarded to me. The town paid $42,500 for this property, and I have been told spent approximately $80,000 to remediate the contamination, making it cost less than $125,000. My bid of $160,000 would have given the town a $35,000 profit. Is the town in the real estate business? Is that the direction you're electing to take? Or are you simply being greedy? Do you in fact need the money? Or is there another reason? I understand that the check from the bid thrown out was from a local foundational trust. Since the bid was emailed or faxed, I would like to know who delivered the check from said foundational trust to the town of Tryon. I would also like to know who signed the check. Mayor and commissioners, I believe this process is tainted and would request a thorough investigation of the parties involved. I would also request that any further attempt to market this property wait until this investigation is completed. Please take the time to consider the optics of this situation at hand. Thank you for hearing my comments.
Yes, sir. Thank you. We have a motion.
Well, some of his questions haven't been answered. I'll tell you the reason that I voted to do what we did at the last meeting. Else it's not anything other than there was a bid that came in at the last minute. They didn't hire a realtor. It was fuzzy, but the intent was there. And that's the reason. I don't think that anybody was trying to pull any wool over anybody's eyes, but the intent was to purchase the property. And I think that intent was earnest.
Could I have the person's name who brought the check and who signed the check?
Well, I think that's probably.
Public record, William.
Yes,
Is that public knowledge?
it's public record.
Okay.
So I'll get it to you.
Do you happen to know it now?
Hey, do you have the stuff with you, Susan? I mean, I know. Yeah.
It was on a yes and on check and it's signed by Chris Alpers.
Stood up in good faith and dealt with the situation that had gone on for 2 years on the process.
You know, I understand that. I had the opportunity to purchase that property. It was offered $55,000, and I decided I didn't want my name on it until it was remediated by somebody that had a shield in from a possible lawsuit.
Through that process. And I'm gonna be frank with you. We had long sort of pointed battles about whether or not the town of Tryon should get involved in remediating a problem that clearly belonged to a private owner. And my position was, we have a duty to all of our citizens to look after the aesthetics which is why I pushed to do.
Commissioner, what you're all talking about in the past, that has nothing to do with this process. What I think, the reason I think the process is tainted, is because one of the commissioners brought one of his signed checks from the foundation he's on.
But I completely step back from that process because that's what's legally required.
Well,
Alice, I can't answer all your questions, but I can answer this one. I received a call from the person who filled out the paperwork and turned it in. I told him what I thought was correct and made sure he called Zach to make sure he dotted his I's and crossed his T's. And after that, I don't know what happened until the check came in and I was asked that question. And then I personally asked legally, what do we need to do? And that's when we got the legal answer, what we should do, and that's what we did.
and I think that was the proper answer, not to consider his bid, but I think you had an opportunity to accept mine, which had a muddy bid not come in at the last minute with a bad check. It should have been accepted, and you would have accepted it. And when I first had a conversation with you, Chris, when you advised me to spend $140,000, you told me, look, if it had not been upset, that you would recommend approval. Well, you got your out because it was upset, so I'll let you go on that. But that's what you said. I'm talking about the first time. Mayor, I reiterate, I think you've got a tainted process here. I think y'all need to fully investigate what's going on before you move forward.
I think we went to the local government.
I got good, all that.
Well, the board, I'll just say,
My question is this, have we done what we should have done legally and ethically?
yes, I believe so, but you also always had the right to reject all bids. And so that's the final action you took last time, as I recall. And so now another one is here, it's come in, and the question before the council tonight is whether or not to adopt this resolution to start the process over. So I understand that it was murky and then, weren't sure if it had to be, if it was valid since it wasn't brought in to City Hall like they had, I think it said. But in any event, you exercised the right you have by statute and reserved in the resolution to reject all the bids and start over or hold the property or whatever you want to do with it.
Nellis, we're not trying to be greedy, however, our obligation is to the town. And we are not a wealthy town, and we're a town of few people. So our obligation was there, and that's the reason that if I felt like we could get some more money out of it, I would like to see it.
But I thought the obligation was to clean it up, because that's what was first put forward.
Well,
We're
that
gonna
is,
clean it up and then we're gonna sell it, get our money back.
well, that is That was one of our obligations when we did it. And we are the ones that cleaned it up and bought it. And so if we want to make a little bit of money off of it, that's nothing wrong.
And my feeling is still,
This is what pays for other projects. I mean, we only have limited level funding.
But also what pays for other projects are your local businesses and your local people who contribute to the project. Over the years, that adds up, because people love where they live and they love the people here.
But it's a cumulative part.
We have a motion. Do you wish to withdraw your motion?
Well, I'm uncomfortable with it.
Make the same motion I made at the last meeting, I can, that we reward Mr. Fincher with the purchase.
I think the only thing before the board tonight is whether or not to adopt the resolution or not can be for any reason, but either adopt it and advertise, or
We have a motion and we need to vote on this either up or down or withdraw it.
there is a pending, that's right, there is a pending.
I'll withdraw it for the moment.
Okay, we have this motion withdrawn. Is there further discussion?
As I said at the last meeting, I felt that the process had ended, there was only one bid in at that point in time.
I get exactly what you're saying.
I think
But
that,
not for the last line that we put in there, that we have the right to reject any bid for any reason. I would totally agree.
you voted on that too, to reject
Yes,
all the
we did.
bids.
Yes,
So
we did.
that's the final action, and whether or not, I don't have my Robert's rules with me, but whether or not, my belief is would have to undo that, which I can't give you suggested language for tonight. It would be a motion to rescind, motion to reconsider, or something of that nature. I got into this once a long time ago, so I have to look into it.
What I would like to see, and what I only ever wanted to see, is for us to get back on track in this process.
And I want to work this from both sides, off reality and law, not emotion. I would love to have you as a neighbor up the street from me.
you already got me as a neighbor.
A little closer.
This other person is a Polk County native.
Really?
Yes. Just so you know.
How long has he been here?
Well, he was born here.
Born here, 58 years.
So it's not, we're not just.
Now, if we pull the motion for the time being, what do you want to do?
Well,
I would say a motion to table was another it would be another viable motion at this time. However, or a motion to approve this, or no action would essentially be tabling it.
And that's just prolonging the.
yeah, it may be, but this is not something we need to rush about either.
I mean,
So I
unfortunately,
don't have a problem with tabling it for a month.
unfortunately, last month's proceedings, when you rejected all bids, that process was cut off. So we cannot return to that process, regardless of whether or not you'd like to at this point. So your options would be to move forward with the resolution that's put in tonight, or to table this and task me with figuring out the legalities of other scenarios that lie before you.
I would prefer the second option. You take on this for a month and then you do it.
Let me ask a legal question. If we table it, and we then go back and do this, was that then off the table because we tabled it and not bid on voted on what we should have.
That depends on if the offer
If the offer
is, remains
Yeah.
open.
What you have are two entities who both believe at this point they have a winning bid.
well,
I mean, it doesn't make any difference what, my perception is, these two entities believe they have a winning bid at this time.
Well, one has just made a new bid, got back in the running when he rejected all the bids received up through the last meeting.
Which means in essence, we have no bids. Is that not correct? If we reject.
You have
all bids?
one, but you have the option whether to advertise that and move forward or table it or reject it and then just hold the property and then put it up, advertise it again and invite new bids. It's a very limited range of options, but I think if you table it, the bids have to look into what the correct motion would be to undo, if there's interest in that, to undo the action of, or if it can be done, undo or reconsider the vote to reject all bids that occurred at the last meeting, which was unanimously, I think, adopted, but Chris withdrew.
I personally would like you to look into it.
Okay, if you can make a motion.
I'll make a motion to that effect.
Move to retable it and have them investigate as it were. Okay, we have a motion to table with the manager investigating. All those in favor, aye. Okay, unanimous. Thank you. All right. Item 9, conditional use permit.
Okay, so we're doing a public hearing. This hearing is in regards to case 21-CU-REZ-01. Mr. Brent Wayne Scott owns the property of 574 Howard Gap Road in Tryon and is applying for a conditional use district rezoning and a conditional use permit to allow for him to run a bed and breakfast on his property. Initially, it was applied for as a straight rezoning from R3 to R4.
Excuse me, Tim, Mayor, can you declare the public hearing open?
Oh, thank you, you're right. I do need to declare this public hearing, and we both don't we have to have this applied judicial, or do we not?
Yes, yes,
So if you testify, you have to be sworn in.
yes. You can have everyone stand that is planning on giving testimony and swear that once.
Thank you. If you want to speak, please raise your hand, you can be sworn in.
If we don't do this, please say your name, because I don't know part of it. All right. Do you swear or affirm that the evidence you shall give to the board in this action shall be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, and nothing but the truth?
Would you like everyone that was just sworn to state their name now for the record?
That would be good.
You want to do it now or you want to do it before they speak?
They can do it before they speak, but anyone, just because you were sworn, you don't have to speak, but if you'd like to, you just ask that when it comes your time to speak, that you state your name and address, and we'll know if you're opposed or not. Okay, so it would be appropriate for Tim to do the staff report.
May I just ask 2 questions before we begin? Okay. And if I offend you, I'm sorry, I'm gonna ask the questions, it's my time, okay? Who bought the property? Did you investigate the zoning before you bought it?
Yes, sir.
And how did you not know that you couldn't put in what you wanted to put in?
I knew I couldn't.
Okay,
That's why I applied for rezone.
But this ain't,
That's what we're asking.
why is it that y'all were opposed to it, and then there was a change, and these people met your requirements, and then you were still opposed to it? And that,
Because they didn't meet the requirement, which was we did not want to change from an R3 to an R4.
Okay. Tim,
I just, I needed to hear that. Okay, I'm sorry, Nathan.
Okay, sorry.
All right, I'll start over. This hearing is in regards to case 21-CU-REZ-01. Mr. Brent Wayne Scott owns the property at 574 Howard Gap Road in Tryon and is applying for a conditional use district rezoning and a conditional use permit to allow him to run a bed and breakfast on this property. Initially, it was applied for as a straight rezoning from R3 to R4. In the initial planning board meeting, members of the community voiced their concerns regarding the other uses that would be allowed, specifically multifamily dwellings, and there was a mention of serving bourbon and wine to guests. As a result of the discussion, Mr. Wayne Scott was given the opportunity to change the application to the conditional use path and reapply addressing those concerns. At the follow-up planning board meeting, the board unanimously voted to recommend to the town council that the application be denied. The town attorney will now explain the process, then we can swear in and hear witnesses.
But just 1 minute, so we get on that. This is what was being considered a couple months back was a straight rezoning. The hallmark of a straight rezoning is all the different uses that are listed in the permissible use table, the relevant portions of which are in your packet. All those uses are on the table. They could be, start off as ones, become something else. One option to that, you're not supposed to consider what they say they're going to do, you're supposed to consider all of them. So one option to get around that, because boards always know there's always a project being discussed as part of a rezoning, is to do what's called a conditional use district rezoning, which is an approach that yields 2 decisions potentially. One is whether or not to rezone, and at the same time, you're considering and make a second decision on whether or not to issue a conditional use permit. That way, you do know what you're getting. You can talk about what the intended use is. And the result of those 2 actions is that every use on that particular property becomes a conditional use, becomes whether or not the ordinance says that all they need is a zoning permit or whatever, it elevates everything to a conditional use. So it's a little cumbersome. We've done one fairly recently with St. Luke's where it changed course. It originally started off as a straight rezoning, and then it became a conditional use district rezoning. So the decision as to whether or not to rezone is a legislative decision. Nobody would have to be sworn in, but since it involves this element of a conditional use permit, this board sits much like a court. So it's called a quasi-judicial. Well, you're not a court, but sort of like one, quasi-judicial. And therefore, applicants and those in opposition that wish to speak have to be sworn in, because you're going to have to potentially weigh some of that. I've seen cases where, you have to basically, just like a jury, decide who's telling the truth. I think it's more of opinion here. But nonetheless, everyone is under oath now. We can proceed. I think the best way to do it is to hear from the applicant first and see what happens. And another feature of a quasi-judicial is that opponents that have been sworn can do cross-examination, they can ask questions, just as the applicants can ask questions of the opponents who are sworn in. The clerk has to keep a record of all of this, so we need to find out the name and address of each person at the outset before you give your remarks. And we can proceed to hear from the applicant. Board meetings is appropriate now.
Thank you. Members of the council, appreciate you listening to us today. My name is Brett Wayne Scott. This is Tammy Scott. We're the owners of the property 574 Howard Gap Road. We appreciate the time today. Hopefully clear up some misconceptions from prior meetings and alleviate some fears that maybe I caused in my initial description of the property. We have no intention of making enemies of our neighbors. We want to be good citizens of Tryon, and we will do that no matter what the decision is here. One misconception, I think, is that we are not
on site. Tammy lives there full-time, her mother lives there, her son. I have a business in Charlotte, so I'm in Charlotte a few days a week, and I live here on the week. But Tammy, her mom and son live there full-time. I'm an Air Force veteran, Tammy's a Navy veteran. She recently retired to hopefully run this bed and breakfast. Yes, we knew it was R3 only, and we knew what we had to do to try and make it a bed and breakfast, and hopefully you'll understand why we want to do that by the end of this. I recently retired from 35 years as an American Airlines pilot out of Charlotte. I have a second business, financial planning business with Raymond James in Charlotte. That's where I am 2 days a week, and then live here on the weekends. So last August, Tammy and I were looking for property in the area. We pulled off 26, came down 108, saw a nice sign in front of the Green Life Inn saying bed and breakfast right there, pointing straight ahead to Howard Gap Road, which I assume was originally meant for the Mass Farm Inn, which we know is not an inn anymore. Went down to 574 Howard Gap and met Ray and Linda Williams. They were selling it, fell in love with the property. The house was built in 1913 by the Wilcox family, the founders of Tryon. Our intent was not only to live there, but we've been here many years for cyclists, hikers. We love the area. We wanted to share that with friends and guests, share the equestrian center. My business partners, children are the spokespeople for the equestrian center. They run all the events out there. So we love the area. We like the wineries in the area. We do have a wine collection. I may have messed up on my initial, and to clear up something Tim said that is a misconception. We do have a wine cellar at the property and a bourbon bar. I have a wine collection and a bourbon collection. Our intent is not to pursue a liquor license, never was. According to Polk County, you can't even pour, much less sell liquor if you don't have a liquor license. So we will not be pouring liquor for any guests at the property. My intent was only to differentiate. There aren't too many, we're gonna build a pool as well. There aren't too many bed and breakfasts in the area that have a pool and a wine cellar. It was only put there to differentiate us from some other features of a bed and breakfast in the area. I have since found out that may have struck a nerve because I guess there was some drinking at Harmon Field issues, and some of our neighbors are probably fearful of drunks leaving our property and driving all over. That is not the intention of our bed and breakfast. We applied for R4, knowing, not expecting the opposition. We understand and heard loud and clear some of the fears were commercialization and the fact that it allowed for multifamily housing, which is not our intent. So the solution was to apply for conditional use and only be allowed to be a bed and breakfast, which is what we applied for. I was not allowed or not able to make it here for the hearing for that due to gas shortage in Charlotte, but we failed at that attempt as well. I don't know really the reasons yet. Some of it may have been the fear that we're just now addressing about liquor. We have no intent to do that. We are full-time homeowners there. The only reason we can be an Airbnb without permission from anybody, and that's not the way we want to go, because we feel a bed and breakfast has a little older clientele usually, and somebody going to stay at a bed and breakfast understands that the owner is on the property and probably more respectful of the property. In Airbnb, many times they're hoping the owner isn't there, and we're not looking for the people who go to Sierra Nevada and don't want to make it all the way back to Charlotte and look up on Airbnb and find our property or another property here, thinking or hoping the owner isn't there. That's the reason we want a bed and breakfast, is to be more respectful and hopefully have a higher clientele with our neighbors in the area. Appreciate your time. Did I leave anything?
I just want to add the gate. Nobody's leaving our property unless that gate is
Oh, yeah.
opened by me, so if they have been.
Did you give her
they're not
name?
leaving.
This is.
Oh, I'm so
Scott.
sorry, Tammy Scott, 574 Howard Gap Road. The other thing is, our property is fenced and gated, electronic gate. You have to have a gate opener to enter or leave the property. And if there is even suspected people drinking and trying to drive, that gate won't open for them. So I don't want you to think they're going to drive people. And again, we're not serving, we're not allowed to serve. They're just points of interest, like having a pool or a tree house, which we also have on the property. We were just trying to set our property aside and hopefully reach for a higher level clientele than what an Airbnb would bring.
We appreciate your consideration. Thank you.
Thank you.
Yes, we're doing this. Emily Rogers Ellis, 534 Howard Gap Road. So I didn't prepare a speech, but I've spoken before. I'm the direct neighbor to the applicants who are filing for this conditional use. I grew up in Tryon. I'm native from here, born and raised. Lived here until I was 18, and now I'm back 23 years later, moved back with my family, and 3 small children. I have a 3-year-old, a 6-year-old, and a soon-to-be 8-year-old. We purchased the Jaeger property, which is directly adjacent to this property a year ago, and we have been doing renovations on that property since that time. I love Tryon. It is the greatest place in the world. I was lucky enough to convince my husband to move back here, and every day I wake up and I'm like, this is great. I love this. People are great, the mountains, everything. And moving here, I wanted to live in a town that would have a good sense of community, friendly, and it was also fairly rural. I grew up on a farm, and I appreciate that. So when this application came in to initially become a bed and breakfast and turn from an R3 to an R4 with, in their original addendum, 2 reasons we were opposed to this. Number one, R4 is going to open this whole area up, the Howard Gap area, which is traditionally all residential, into the possibility that it not be residential, it's going to be R4. R4 meaning it can have duplexes, apartments, nursing homes, who knows? That is not what that area looks like, and that's really not what the people who have grown up there want it to be. It's also a very slippery slope. We let one R4 come in as a bed and breakfast, sounds great, let's have a bed and breakfast. Well, what's next? Who else wants to have an R4? Who else wants to, have a nursing home there? Number 2, I'm young, but I wasn't born yesterday. So the deal is, you originally had an applicant apply to change this to an R4 for a bed and breakfast with clearly stating a bourbon room. And now they say it again, well, we're not going to have a bourbon room, but we are going to have a wine cellar, but we're not going to serve, but it's to draw people in. I don't understand that. If you're telling me you're having a wine cellar, then I think you're probably going to have wine on the premises. So for the town of Tryon to think it's okay to have a bed and breakfast in less than a quarter mile of one of your biggest drawing points on the field, where hundreds of families, small children congregate day after day, weekend, I think that's not a good idea. Like I said, I like community. I'm a part of the community. I work with St. Luke's. I'm a general surgeon, and I work at Spartan Regional. I'm here to stay, and to have, I'm sorry that this property was purchased and you had the idea of applying to this and thought you were gonna get it. I'm sorry that that happened, but I think it's a bad idea. So, thank you.
My name is Garland Rice, and I've been involved in this process mostly because my name is Garland Rice, yes, 1536 Howard Gap Road. I've been involved in this whole process, and it's been a tedious thing because I'm mostly thinking about Sally Page on our road, who alerted me about this process. An 80-year-old woman with a heart condition who couldn't be here today. So I'm thinking about her as I see these things. This community has been fiercely protected. I talked to Mr. Wainscott a while back, and he said he just loved this area. And I said, well, it's because it has been fiercely protected. And it continues to be. These are neighbors who are the backbone of this community. Now, Mr. Peoples asked him a direct question, did he know about this before he bought the property? At the first meeting, I think the record would show, the minutes would show that I asked him the same question. And at that time, he said no.
No.
Sure. You don't?
I don't think it was R3. I knew we had to apply to be a bed and breakfast.
Well, I was asking you, did you know about this issue before you bought the property? Then you said today, yes. I don't know how much difference there was there, but that's my recollection. I think the minutes would probably show the same thing. Anyway, I'm going to keep it brief because I know time's precious to you all. It's unfortunate if you made a mistake, but we shouldn't have to, as Lucy said, have people benefiting from her and our hard work protecting the community. Thank you.
My name is Tim Brandon. I live at 2253 Warrior Drive. First, I'd like to simply say that we've been through 2 planning committee meetings, and both have voted this idea down. Once from going from an R3 to an R4, and then going from an R3 to conditional use R4. So I hope that that will be taken into consideration since that's the town's planning board. Further, point being that Lucy and I have lived here a long time. We're born in Tryon. We have a farm property on Warrior Drive. We have protected that property. We have avoided any development of the property, and we have now purchased additional property on Estabrook Hill and adjacent to your property. We are doing everything we can to protect it, to keep it pristine, to work with the community to try and preserve that type of property, which we believe is what Polk County and the town of Tryon wants. To now change this one piece of property to an R4, we now realize that one of the opportunities to get an R4 is because of a piece of property which Emily and her husband own, which for some reason, some sliver of it was considered an R4, and that we're not quite sure as to why that's the case, and that is in the process of being looked at and trying to be changed. But to bootstrap off of that, to try and get an R4 rating, we don't feel is appropriate. And our concern is that we've got potentially a camel nose under the tent, and other people then in the future could say, well, if there's an R4 there, then we want an R4 on our property. I understand there are more considerations. Your attorney has made that clear. There are more considerations than just whether you're adjacent to an R4. Nevertheless, that is one specific issue that has been raised over and over again with this. We don't feel that's appropriate, and we certainly don't want to further that in the rest of the area we do. Thank you.
Wait. Did I listen to here wrong? I thought this was strictly for conditional use, not a change to R4.
No, well, it's all heard together. It's all wrapped up. You can't divorce I mean, you know that you're, at the end of it, you're going back up to possibly two decisions. One, whether or not to rezone. And if it is to rezone, if it's positive to the applicant, then we would make a decision to issue the conditional use permit. So, it's on a separate but side-by-side tracks. And so,
It would be rezoned to the R4, but it would have a conditional use.
Okay.
This would be for bed and breakfast use.
and that's all it could be, but
No other use on R4. So just.
correct.
Yeah.
So we're doing it correctly, and, we can,
No, I just wanted that for clarification
Yes.
to me, because I don't think I'm the only one who had that question. Looking at faces. Okay. Anybody else here for?
I'll speak to Carolyn Ross, Henry, 1519 Howard Gap Road. I'm a farmer on Howard Gap Road, and my farm, Trying Mountain Farms, sells products in Greenville and Asheville online. So we do a lot about promoting Trying in North Carolina. I have an interesting perspective because I'm far enough away, and yet I have history of Sally and my parents fighting to have R1 further up the road. The reality is as follows in my mind. You all were told that you could have potentially an R4. You were denied that, and then the conditional use came up, and that was discussed. The reality is, and I agree specifically with Emily, that allowing a conditional use R4 in this neighborhood sets a precedent for other areas within Tryon, our neighborhood, to become R4. And I hear everything about the bourbon bar and the wine cellar, and I understand that, but even if you were to get that okay today, let's say hypothetically, then you could come, and we're denied having a wine bar and a bourbon bar, then you could come back in another period of time and say, I'd like to change this, and we won't close that gap down, guys. The reality is, I looked up online and I told the group this week, there are 73 Airbnbs in Tryon, boom. There are 14 within a mile radius of you all. There's one that's $250 a night, that's at Lincoat, the guest house. Packlet Ridge has a Shannon Merriweather house up there, that's $500 a night. I really question, and an Airbnb can have breakfast. You can say, I'm an Airbnb, the host is on premise, you can have a breakfast. That is all within the advertising. So honestly, there are two ways here that I'm looking at this. To preserve our neighborhood, they could have an Airbnb, but if you allow it, then they potentially, and others could potentially change the face and the scope of our road. And again, it's close to Farming Field. I drive that road multiple times a day. I see a lot of walkers and runners. I want to be safe, and I want people that utilize our road to be safe. So, in that fact, I think that you all have walked down a path, and you need to consider that there are options for you, just not conditional use or powerful. So thank you very much.
Yes, I hear you and I appreciate your comments, and we agree with it. We can go the Airbnb route. We're the walkers and cyclists on the road too. We know we're new. We're not longtime Tryon residents. We'd like to be. We're gonna be, whether we get approved or not. We want to be good neighbors. We are not pursuing. We can't serve alcohol without a liquor license. We can't even pour it, much less sell it. So the fact that I put that in there was only as a differentiator, that we do have a wine cellar. There are wineries all around here. A wine cellar is a selling point. It doesn't mean we're serving alcohol or that there's drunks running all over our property. There are wine lovers in the area. That's part of what we like about this area, is there are nice wineries. So again, applying, and maybe I misunderstand the conditional use. I thought the whole solution, and we originally did apply, not for R4, but conditional use R4. We were advised to switch that because the process was changing on conditional use, and it would be easier to start with the R4. We had no intention, never had any intention to do anything other than a bed and breakfast. That's all we want. And we thought the conditional use limited us and anybody else. Whoever bought our property, if we ever sold, that was it. So opening up to other issues that could or could not happen down the road may apply to somebody else, but I don't see how it applies to our property if we're only allowed to do a bed and breakfast. Having stayed at many bed and breakfasts and Airbnbs, I do think you get a higher clientele at a bed and breakfast because they do expect the owner there. Maybe the ones that are in the area here have the owner there as well, but not all Airbnbs and a lot of people that rent on Airbnb are looking for one that the owner is not on site. We will. Thank you.
So just to clarify, and William kick in, Tim chime in, conditional use, when that is applied, that would mean that whatever is assigned is the only thing that would be allowed. If they were to sell the property to someone else, that someone else does not get carte blanche to do the bed and breakfast. They would have to come reapply and go through the whole process.
No, they can do a B&B, they can live there, keep it as a house, or operate a B&B, or both. In fact, your ordinance requires that the owner on site, so each application rises and falls on its own. You as board must decide if it's good or bad, to oversimplify it. But, it would not be appropriate, in my opinion, to think about what might happen in the future. Any of these folks can come back, that, or a future owner, or current owners, and seek rezoning. It's just a fundamental right. You have zoning, if it applies in that area, then anybody, you don't even have to be the owner to apply for rezoning.
Correct me if I'm wrong, here, we are here to decide one thing.
Right. The rest of what might happen is speculation in the future. I understand that's a real concern, but the board can't base its decision on your
That's not
speculation.
what we're here.
Yeah, here are the facts.
Yes.
I just have a point of clarification.
Please, your name.
Tara Brandon, I live at 2210 Warrior, no, what do I live? Warrior Drive. I don't know where I live, somewhere near these people. My question is that you said before when, Mr. Peoples asked you, Mayor Peoples asked you if it was, conditional and R4, you said yes. So is conditional attached to R4? Does it become R4 with a condition? Because that's important, that's an important distinction.
Okay.
And I'm still not clear on that.
If I may, it becomes R4, but it doesn't open it up to all the R4 uses, which substantially overlap with R3, but there are a few things you can do, mainly.
And I know that you don't think it's something to consider, but it does open our neighborhood up to having R4, which is a slippery slope, I think.
It's fine to have concern,
Yeah.
and to express it. The board just can't use that as the linchpin to its whole decision, what might happen in the future. But I don't know if I really, I think I understood your question, but now I'm about to forgot it. But
My question is, so I think what you have said to me is that it will become R4 with a special condition. So the zoning would change, should they vote yes, to R4, but there would be special conditions applied.
it would be R4 with only one thing allowed.
Right.
Not everything within R4, just that one thing. And it runs with the land, so if someone else were to buy it and wanted to continue the operation as a Democrat, they could. But they couldn't build an apartment building or multifamily, or one of the other things that I know you all were concerned about, that you can do in R4 but not R3. It's limited. It really constricts the uses to just what's in the application.
Sure, but it's in R4.
It is in R4, but there's only one allowed use.
But on the map, on your maps, it would show.
No, it would say RU, it would say CU or
So I'm Lucy Brandon, and I'm at 2253 Warrior Drive. So the final thought process about this is that we live in this peaceful neighborhood that we have spent 40 years, Tim and I, buying property up around ours and maintaining it, having the trees cleaned up, keeping it mowed. It looks lovely. We don't want on Saturday night, Friday night, Monday night, we don't want an extra 12 people sitting at the pool at the bed and breakfast, whether they're drinking or not, having fried chicken, having ridden their bikes all day, and they come home and they're tired, and they're sitting by the pool, and they're probably having a beer, excuse me. And we don't want that. That is commotion. We don't want commotion. We want it the way it is, which is a residential neighborhood.
Closed session vote.
Can I ask?
Is there, you're able to ask as the board, you can ask questions of.
Yeah, I
anybody.
want to ask our attorney, or Zach and our attorney. On our planning board, are there township positions? Or is everybody from the?
Tim probably answered this better than me.
Yeah, we have a pool mainly of, in-town, town limits people, and then we have ETJ people and alternates in both. The ETJs are appointed by the county, and the town limit people are brought on by you, so.
Okay, so they actually had representation through township.
Yes.
Okay, that's all that's my.
We're both
Go back to that just quickly. We have to have ETJ people.
Yes,
do we not?
it's mandatory.
Just want to make sure,
It's-
since we had ETJ, they must have people from there.
Yes. Okay.
Yes, ma'am.
Mr. Scott, I'm sure that more than the residents that are here live in that community.
Yes.
Are there any for you all?
Not that we brought with us.
Do you have the email that I sent you earlier?
Yeah, there should have been something sent out.
Again, this isn't it's supposed to be like,
Yes.
who's got the most votes, so to speak. However, and you can't base it on something that someone's not here, that you can't ask questions of. However, you can be made known of its existence, and this came from the president of the TDDA, there's an email.
Well, it was in a personal capacity.
Personal, well, whatever, but anyway, it's here, it's there, it'll become part of the record, just like the letters and emails you received in office.
I understand that, I just wanted clarification that if there are more people in the neighborhood than if anyone doesn't agree with me, that's all.
That's here, we're looking for is the cold hard facts. And I'd like to move to close.
Ask if there's any more, just since this is a due process, here and required.
You're correct.
If there's anybody that wants to ask a question of the applicant, or the applicant wants to question any of you that testified, now's the time to do that.
I have one question. Do you all have any personal community experience running bed and breakfast or have you ever?
We do not.
So you have no experience about any of this process that you're going to do right now?
We've talked about it for years, researched it a lot, but we have never actually done.
And this is a boutique B&B. This is not a 17-bedroom process. This is a small 3-bedroom max, 8 people max at any given time, and that's only if we're full. We honestly will have more weekend guests as friends eating chicken by the pool and swimming and socializing than we would probably Airbnb guests. We're not doing this to disrupt your neighborhood. I understand your concerns, but I don't want you to think this is going to be a big commercial process. This is a small property boutique experience for us to run. Second question. If you're journaling tonight, will you have an Airbnb? Yes. Okay, thank you.
Okay.
Did we close the hearing then?
If comments are complete, then it'd be a perfect closed hearing and we'd have deliberations about it. Yeah, but I will say this, well, I don't foresee this happening, but sometimes due to the number of comments and for whatever reasons, another option is to recess the public hearing in case other evidence comes in. I think this is pretty much sums it up on this one, so And you just, so that way you wouldn't have to re-advertise and that sort of thing, just recess it, so.
And I think we're good.
Okay.
I need to
Close it
close
here.
this, or can I close
Now,
this?
you can close it as the chair, that's what you typically do. is,
This public hearing closed. Chair will entertain a motion.
Gonna make a motion that we accept the recommendation of the planning and zoning board and deny the request.
Okay, did you get that, Susan? That we accept the recommendation of the planning and zoning board and deny the request. All those, any discussion?
No, I tend to agree. I'm sorry for you folks, because I think your intent is proper, but we do have a zoning board that we entrust them to do the research.
Vote first. All those in favor, aye? All opposed likewise? Motion carries. Then go ahead.
No, I mean, it's
Was
just
it
a
three?
good point.
Okay.
Did you vote for?
I'm just making sure I didn't see you say or do.
Yeah.
Okay. It is denied. All right, let's move to item 9, item 9, we've just finished. Item 10, minimum housing update. That's okay. We're rolling.
Okay. Okay, so we got the bids on the project there. So 427 East Howard and 45 East Livingston were both bid on by SBR Services. And they are basically the low bids. They can also do the jobs in succession. They can finish one and roll the equipment right over to the other site and get that one going. So personally, I'm gonna recommend them, but we did get some from Case as well. So that's the situation with there. With the East Livingston property, I am talking to Philip Fagan tomorrow about the addendum paperwork, just so we have something in writing that we are pursuing. We will pursue that at no extra cost to us, that extra piece of property. Yeah, just to see what, to cover us, we have it in writing that we are going to get that other piece of property.
Before you get going, can you make motion on the SBR services contract? Because all in all, it's like 30 something or whatever, but it's over. Yeah.
What is it? See?
SBR, they're the ones that tore down Melrose, they're doing the 2 homes, they're the low bid.
Okay.
Oh, it's here, I'll give you my paperwork here. Okay.
All those in favor, aye. All those likewise, motion carries.
140 Grady Avenue, the owner has informed me that demolition is going to start on June 7th. So that'll be down and cleaned up in a couple weeks here. And 140 Grady Avenue, Grady Markham on the corner there. So that'll be cleaned up early June next month. And 143 Broadway, I sent just an inquiry letter asking for the status of the property, what their intent is, just so we know. We know right from them. I hope the answer. But I asked them, are you gonna repair the roof, or are you gonna sell the property? It's just an inquiry letter. I informed him that the house does not warrant a minimum housing inspection yet. It will at some point if nothing happens. So I'll wait and hear, see if we hear anything from him.
Is that the house on Broadway?
Yes.
Yeah. Okay. Good.
I had several people contact me.
I know a lot of people want to buy that house.
Which one's that?
Right across the street from Shelley Woodward's house on Broadway.
That's it?
TDDA, Zach.
Hey, everybody. Great to see you all. So I submitted the EV report along with your packets like I told you I would last month. So, if you all had any questions for me, now would be a great time. Some of the stuff that we are working on right now, we are planning to talk with you all at your June 15 work session about the MSD. That's going to hopefully be planning for the next year, so we're really excited about that. We also are reinstating a downtown facade grant that we had once run, I think, a couple of years ago, but just excited to get that back in the works. It's going to be a matching grant up to $2,000 that downtown businesses can apply for if they have projects for front facade improvements. So that would be awnings, paint, their front exterior to the street. So hopefully that'll help us get downtown looking nice and spiffy. Yeah, so we're going to be applying for some more funding. I told y'all we're going to be applying for the Duke Energy Grant, which is $25,000, which we would be able to give to business relief for COVID-related issues. We're hopeful that we're going to get that funding coming through. Yeah, that's about all I have right now, unless you all have any further questions on this.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay.
Okay.
Okay, I will try to keep it. I've been meeting with, issue. We had a couple meetings past couple of weeks. We're still on time with our Sodra funding grant. Withers and Ravenel is working on the engineering, and then once we get the approval from the state, we get reimbursed. We get that money, basically that's almost $2 million, or just over $2 million, through the loan and the grants and whatnot. We've been communicating with the state regarding our budget process. I've gotten the signage ordered for the plaza. The big thing to hit on today is you've seen the sidewalks have been marked up. I tracked down through the locates to figure out what was going on. It's a company called Segra, S-E-G-R-A. They're a telecommunications firm out of Greenville. It's a fiber project. I decided to call NCDOT, see what they knew. They didn't know anything, so I forwarded them everything I got, including all the plans. DOT is going to be looking into it. We're going to see what happens with that. I also informed Duke, because there's a lot of issues. It seems like a pretty big project. The more I'm supposed to be meeting with them, when I find out what's going on, I will let you know. We've done a bunch of different stuff around town. Obviously we're working with Duke on the lights, so as soon as I get something from them, I'll let you know. I did want to thank Duke for the response to the East Howard tree down. That worked very well for us. We've been meeting with the county on a couple of different things, including county and town responsibilities and where they lie, as well as different things regarding range. We've been working on the AARP funding. One thing that is important, DHEC has reached out. I gave them the Cranston review. One thing that the Cranston review recommended was that we inform NCDOT of the bridge. So I will be forwarding that to the bridge, or to the NCDOT, so that they have that. And just
You're talking about Lake Lanier Bridge?
Yes, sir.
SC. SC.
I'm sorry.
Did we move to state line yet?
Yeah, we can do.
Now we got to do something.
Soon.
No. They don't have anything to add unless you have questions of them. I did want to thank everyone in that room because they've been working very hard and doing lots of stuff. Go ahead, Chris. Sorry.
Can I please see a copy of the signage? Or say,
I don't have a copy. It's going to be black and gold, and it's going to say, it's very simple. It's at this plaza donated by Bob Lane. But I can get a mock-up if you want a mock-up.
and where are you going to put that sign?
Wherever y'all want.
Thank you, sir.
So, but yeah, just going forward, the guys, everyone in this back office that y'all can't see, been working really hard. Paige been working hard, Tim's been working hard. So, big props to them, and thank you for the budget process and allowing us to move forward with what we are planning to do.
Okay, tonight, order, Bill Ingram, Chris, Bill Cole, Sherelle, and me.
Yeah, I just want to thank everybody in that room back there, and the one sitting right outside. Thank you all for all your hard work, and anything else.
Thank you to the town employees, particularly of late, for your work at the cemetery. Appreciate that. Successful groundbreaking for the new salon. Article to be published tomorrow in the Mountain Express. Everyone seemed quite surprised by the special guest, Legacy, who flew overnight cross country to be with us, and who will be back again. And to preview, and Sherelle mentioned this as well, I look forward to some upcoming work with a couple of citizens this week and next on the east side and the field, Sigler Field. Thank you.
I just want to thank the staff and everybody for everything they've done, and I don't have anything else.
Thank you all. Guys, Chris mentioned Ziegler Field, McDonald Wingo. I don't know if he's calling.
I have not heard from him.
I think they took from the last meeting that the field would be ready for them to play on. So they did proceed with whatever was discussed in that last meeting, as far as first, getting the team together and so on and so forth.
Can you give me his contact info?
Yeah, we'll do that too.
Same as always, Bud. Thank you. I can tell you this, Jerry, I'm not gonna ask you to elaborate on it, but Jerry's been working on something that when we get ready to come back, it's gonna be really, really good for helping get the history of crime and preserving things and going. If y'all been out to the cemetery, go out and look at some of the tombstones that's been cleaned primarily by John Biden. So.
I could just say one more thing. I thank everybody in there, but I see these volunteers out here too. Jerry and Wanda, you've worked tirelessly ever since I've known you both, and I've been there 20-some years. And so that's very much appreciated.
Okay. Citizen comments?
I just want to make a note that on the 26th, Wednesday, 9:30 in the morning, we invited everyone to come and walk the cemetery with us as we place the flags on all the veterans, and there's 90 veterans in the cemetery. So, and I just put a notice in the paper for that.
What's the date again?
Or the 26th, Wednesday, 26th, 9:30 in the morning.
Okay, anything else? Anybody else? You make a good call. Shall we pay a motion to adjourn? All in favor, aye? Opposed likewise? Motion carries. We're adjourned.